All right, well, yesterday we told you that farmers are awaiting legislation that could have a major impact on their operations. Well, today, Devontae Martin delves into how the Farm Bill could affect SNAP benefits. Devontae?
Yes, Jennifer, the two proposed farm bills by the House and Senate could possibly affect different aspects of SNAP benefits. Agriculture, dairy, and family farms could all be affected by the delayed farm bill, but the farm bill also affects food access programs such as SNAP. On the nutrition front, the Senate's proposal would lift restrictions on SNAP eligibility for certain groups and explore options for using benefits for hot foods. The House's proposal includes increasing funding conservation and limiting updates to the Thrifty Food Plan, which affects SNAP. Pat Van Berkelio says if negotiations lead into 2025, cuts would likely be made to SNAP.
Stabenow does not get the ability to present her bill this year. I would think that the bill that would be introduced on the floor for next year would have cuts in it. And we are just seeing that the Republican leaders are looking to offset as much expenses as possible.
The Senate's proposal faces challenges, including pushback with some believing the focus should be shifted towards agriculture over expanding nutrition programs. The House's proposal also received criticism as it would cut an estimated $30 billion in SNAP spending over the next decade.
When you start cutting SNAP, you then start having other problems that taxpayers will also have to pay for. We're going to pay for this one way or the other.
And President-elect Donald Trump will have the ability to use executive orders to modify the SNAP program if negotiations roll into next year. Congress is expected to reconvene on Wednesday to discuss the bill.